All right, good afternoon. Now I'd like to bring the special meeting of Township Council to order. And the first item is the adoption and receipt of the agenda items. Could I have a motion, please? Councilor Kunst, and seconder, Councilor Davis. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. And item B, the only item on the agenda, is reconsideration of the item that's on the agenda, the Alder Gateway Project, as amended. And I would move that motion as amended. It's been moved and seconded by Councilor Kunst. So I've moved it, so I'll speak to it. I have asked Mr. Backen to have staff provide us with a bit more information. I do appreciate council being here today. I think this is important that we just take another second look at it. It's a lot of money, but however, it's whatever council wishes at the end of this on how we want to proceed. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Backen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, just a reminder, we're proceeding on the basis of the motion that's before you as amended, not the original motion. And
Right.
In that light, Mr. Seffi's prepared a few comments and slides. Our objective is merely to make sure we have a known set of facts, as there was some, I guess, some confusion, I think, in terms of some of the scope and the scale and what the purpose of the grant application was for. And we hope through this process to confirm at least that the grant application is primarily for, I guess, what will be shown on the screen. It actually tries to identify it to represent what can be done and then give council the maximum flexibility to consider what ultimately may be done with the site. Our focus is going to be on I guess, buildings, deconstruction, utilities, roadways, those sorts of elements, but still to allow council to have the final say in terms of what can be done on the site and and to ensure that there's a broad range of opportunity for what can be done on the site. So with that, Mr. Seffi, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Backen, and thank you, Your Worship. And thank Council for the opportunity to provide, as Mr. Backen referenced, more information for Council's consideration going forward. Your Worship, just in terms of, I guess, the outline and the intent of the presentation, what we hope to cover, is to provide council with information on the background that led staff to consider the Alder Grove Gateway, as we have been referring to it, as a good candidate that would work well within the parameters of the grant application conditions in order to achieve the expenditure requirements of the grant application and the grantors' conditions, as well as meeting the objectives of the Alder Grove Core Community Plan, as well as what we've heard from the public as part of previous discussions, in particular referencing the building demolition costs, as well as providing for flexibility in the future in terms of options to proceed. So with that, Your Worship, just to provide a bit of a context, I know everyone knows what we are referring to, what we're talking about when we talk about the Gateway Plaza. But just for clarity, just wanted to make sure that we are on the same page. The address is 27030 Fraser Highway, and it is immediately adjacent to the west of ACUCC or the Alder Grove Credit Union Community Center. And again, just for contextual purposes, Your Worship, just a couple of photographs that show the site. In this particular case, to the right or to the south of Fraser Highway, this picture is taken looking east, and as I said, the commercial plaza or the Gateway Plaza is to the right or to the south of Fraser Highway, at the corner of 270th Street. This one, Your Worship, is the opposite direction, looks west/southwest, looking at the site in question. And in particular noting some of the transitional works that were done as part of the ACUCC servicing works, Your Worship, fronting the commercial plaza. Continuing with this theme of providing some context and some history, Your Worship, the site's zoning is actually a land use contract, which is land use contract number 49. Underlying zone in the area, which is ordinarily what the land use contract discharge would revert back to, is C2. But just for the purposes of the LUC, I have highlighted here on the slide the uses that are permitted, which are more or less those that are identified in the C2 zone, with some exceptions. I have not gone through a comparative, I guess, analysis of the changes, the differences between the two, but just for council's information, as an example, in this particular case, there is no limitation to residential. It simply says residential above the first story. The land use contract does. Whereas I believe there are some limitations when you look at the C2 language. In terms of history, Your Worship, I thought this was important for us to spend a minute or two just to refresh our memories as to where the site has been, the general area. The core plan area that was adopted by Council in 2010 provided a vision for the future growth in the area. And it talked about several things, obviously, as plans do, but worthy of reiteration or mention here are the following 3 points. One, a compact mixed-use downtown. It talks about also the creation of a public open space through positive interaction interface areas with the public. And thirdly, a functional and aesthetically pleasing, vibrant downtown. I'll talk a little bit more about how those actually translate to what was presented to council further down the road. But in terms of, I guess, the next important milestones, if you will, in the history of the site, after the Alder Grove core plan was adopted, was the acquisition of the Alder Grove Elementary School site in 2012. The cost was approximately $3.7 million, Your Worship, and it was acquired by the township based on the strategic location that it had and the potential that the site offered in terms of meeting the objectives of the core area plan. At the same time, or concurrently, or soon after, we began a process of trying to acquire the site that is now the subject of discussion that was subsequently acquired, but we were not successful. So in 2013, 2014, 2015, the township continued to seek opportunities to acquire the adjacent site to the west, but was not successful. Sometime later, in 2017, were we able to acquire the site. Obviously, some years had gone by since the acquisition of the school site. It's just coincidental that the acquisition costs were approximately the same. The size were obviously different. The school site was approximately 4 acres, and it was, I guess, in different condition, different time, and the commercial plaza, almost the same amount of cost, about 1 acre in size, and the benefit of some buildings that would generate some revenue. In 2018, the ACUCC was opened, obviously the construction having commenced a number of years prior to 2018. We actually saw the opening in 2018. And then the other sites that were acquired in the area began in 2018 as well, both to the south and the east. And 4 residential lots were acquired. Again, I will go into this in a bit more detail later on. Later on in the history of the site in 2020, as council recalls, there was the acquisition of the Alder Inn Plaza further to the east at 272nd and Fraser Highway, as part of which staff were asked to provide council with options analysis, as part of which we did some public input and received some points that were believed by the public to be important. Again, I'll talk about those in a bit more detail. What's important to note here, Your Worship, is also the expiry date of the tenancy agreements within the 3 buildings that are on the commercial plaza site, the gateway site. It is important to note that 2 of the buildings, the tenancy agreements expired in 2020, with the last one expected to expire in 2025. The Alder Grove core plan, as I said earlier, I will spend a minute or two just explaining where we got our guidance and direction from in terms of the concepts that were presented to council. Even though the designation is not for public use, we don't typically designate sites for public use unless we actually own the said site. So the plan talked in general terms, and I have highlighted, underlined the sections that I thought were more relevant to our discussions today. The plan is premised on the creation of great streets and public open spaces through a high quality of design and a positive interface, pedestrian-oriented and humanly scaled streets and plazas in plural, providing for a highly connected pedestrian network and our other essential elements of the plan. Again, urban plazas is referenced throughout the downtown for active uses containing public art and able to accommodate outdoor community events. And finally, the creation of a distinct public realm and interconnected open spaces are also identified in the plan. In 2012, as I said, Your Worship, the details of the acquisition, the site was made available by the school district, which used to own and operate the Alder Grove Elementary School site from there. We acquired it in 2012. The approximate area, it comprised more than one lot. Obviously, there were several lots involved with this acquisition of approximately 4 acres at $3.7 million, again, approximately, with the 2 parcels that you see to the south subsequently acquired as well to accommodate the outdoor components of the Alder Grove Community Center. Sorry, the Alder Grove Credit Union Community Center. This is just a slide explaining our pursuit of the acquisition of the commercial plaza as early as 2014, with the intent of orienting, if you will, the Alder Grove Community Center in an east-west sort of location or direction, given the fact that it provides a more prominent frontage, a more, I guess, iconic presence, if you will, in the neighborhood, but we were not successful. So that kind of restricted our ability to design the building in a way that was considered to be most ideal and more in line with the orientation of the streets. Then with that in mind, we proceeded with the demolition of the existing buildings, obviously recognizing the heritage value. Some of the heritage components were taken out, and as those who have frequented the ACUCC will attest, form a prominent, I guess, entrance or provide for recognition of the history of the site as part of the design of the ACUCC building. Then subsequent to that, in 2017, the commercial plaza was finally acquired. Without going into a lot of detail, that was the subject of council direction to staff to proceed with the acquisition. I can just confirm for council that it was identified as a strategic acquisition. It was identified as almost land banking, if you will, given the fact that it would provide a township, i.e., the public, with the ability to control the development that might occur on that site, as well as providing public parking. So these were key highlights that were identified as part of the acquisition of that site. The area is just under 1 acre, 0.75 acre. The approximate building area on 3 buildings is about 13,000 square feet, and until very recently provided a source of revenue, I don't know to what extent, at least with the 2 northerly buildings, which is no longer the case because those buildings are now vacant. And the one to the south, which is a restaurant establishment, KFC, is continuing, and the lease expires in 2025. The underlying zoning is C2, commercial, service commercial, and the existing land use contract, which could be discharged, is LUC 49. The OCP designation is service commercial with a permissible floor space ratio of 0.5. And based on not an appraised market value, but rather comparables that our staff internally have been able to analyze and come to an understanding on, the guesstimate is between $5 to $7 million. This is just intended to provide a summary of, again, the lease expiration dates. The 2 northerly buildings are now vacant. and the lease expired on them last year, or a couple of years ago, with the last remaining occupied building being the southerly one, that being the Kentucky Fried Chicken, and that expires in 2025. The 2 additional residential lots were acquired to the south to accommodate the outdoor components. I referenced that previously as well. And the ACUCC opening in 2018, very successful, and I think it's fair to say it's a regional attraction and provides a lot of amenities for the community and the communities around the area. Since the opening, 4 additional residential building lots or existing residential dwelling lots have been acquired by the township. The overall cost has been $3.2 million for the 4. I think each one of them are approximately a quarter of an acre, so, or maybe just slightly more. In any case, $3.2 million for the 4 lots, which works out to an average cost of about $800,000 per acre. So those are owned by the township as well.
That'd be $800,000 per lot.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
correct.
thanks.
Yeah. With respect to servicing works, Your Worship, I know that this has been the topic of some discussion as well. Servicing works fronting ACUCC, in particular the road widening, because of the fact that the township was not able to complete the acquisition of the commercial plaza. Obviously, we did not, at the time that the works were going on, we did not have ownership. And as such, the design of not just the roadworks, but all the servicing was within that constraint, within the parameters of that constraint. Those being to be able to transition what we need ultimately, fronting ACUCC, to meet the existing conditions in a safe way, fronting the commercial plaza. So what that meant was, even though the intent was to complete all of those works, essentially from 270th to the lane that you see to the east of ACUCC, we were not able to complete all of them to the ultimate standard. Again, we had to transition to the ultimate, to the existing, and you see some of that, Your Worship, with the aerial photograph that you see here. You see the curb transitioning to 4 lanes. So the 4 lanes ends essentially fronting ACUCC and transition back to 1 lane of traffic fronting the commercial plaza. To provide a bit more detail and a bit more information in that regard, I thought this slide might be useful because some of the questions also related to the costs. What were the costs of those works? Again, the construction, when I talk about the costs, the construction entailed all the way from the lane to 270th. But then keep in mind that the ultimate works were only that fronting ACUCC. So when I say the costs were $1.5 million, it means both ultimate works as well as some transitional works. Keeping in mind the length, 80 meters approximately, just over half, fronting ACUCC between the lane and 270th, and 70 meters from 270th to the east property line of the commercial plaza. The construction costs then, what was it? The 1.5? Well, the 1.5 entailed all of the roadworks, including streetlights, including sidewalks, including curb and gutter, and 1 additional lane fronting ACUCC, and then transitioning that to meet the existing conditions in a safe manner, to meet the existing standards, if you will, on Fraser Highway fronting the commercial plaza. Those costs estimated approximately $300,000. So overall, about 20% of the costs were what could be categorized as transitional and necessary to accommodate the condition at the time, based on public safety and design standards that meet public safety requirements. Some challenges, Your Worship, in terms of, I guess, being the victim of our own success. The lineups that again, those who have been to the site, pedestrians can attest to, that go around the building, fronting Fraser Highway all the way around the side and onto 270th Street. So those are some challenges that we have and we try to address going forward, obviously. The other one relates to traffic circulation, including delivery vehicles and servicing vehicles that attend the site, ACUCC, and the conflict that such coming and going then presents with pedestrians, and in particular, the queuing of pedestrians. And obviously, parking demand management is another issue that we hope to be able to go forward. We hope to be able to address going forward in a stepwise manner as we can. So again, Your Worship, this is not something that was prepared based on any design or anything else, other than having some discussions with staff in terms of what do we feel to be ultimate as far as we can see, needs in terms of expansion of the ACUCC going forward. Again, very high level, obviously not scaled in any way, but just utilizing the eastern area that we have acquired, the 4 lots, for outdoor spaces, because that is kind of how the current design kind of lends itself best to being able to be utilized for, keeping in mind the adjacency issues, the transitional issues, all of those things, the needs of the site, the operations of the outdoor water park, all of those things keeping in mind, kind of gives you the idea of the scope and the size of the outdoor expansion, potentially space, with the blue lines. And then going to the west, what might be potentially indoor space, again, without any design, in terms of what could be accommodated is or what could be constructed is what's shown here with the red lines. This is what was shown to the public in terms of the Alder Plaza at 272nd and Fraser Highway. And it was a document that really informed staff in terms of what might be a desire to see on a more permanent basis, because this was, again, as you may recall, interim use of the Alder Plaza. Council has directed staff to proceed with what might be termed as a higher and better use, or highest and best use of the site, and staff is currently working on that, hoping to be able to present the rezoning application to council at some point in the future. And just in terms of, I guess, summarizing the total costs, approximately $150,000 were spent in terms of the overall objectives was to provide a public plaza, obviously. Flexible public open spaces is what we heard from the public as part of the public input process. Provide for flexibility is what we heard. Community gardens was identified as an important feature. Seating and gathering spaces, and obviously try and deal with the parking challenges that the core area of Alder Grove faces. The 150, I have to, I guess, state and make sure that it's clear, included design costs that we went through, as well as the public engagement costs that were incurred with respect to engaging a consultant to come up with a design and making sure that we have a process and a feedback loop that involves the public and stakeholders, including the Alder Grove Business Association. So that is as far as the Alder Plaza is concerned. As far as the grant details, Your Worship, the Canada Community Revitalization Fund has the COVID-19 stimulus stream funding with approximately $500 million allocated Canada-wide towards the program. It was open for applications in June 23, 2021. And as you can see, very tight timelines. The applications were actually due by July, less than a year, well, a month, almost just a month subsequently. So the expressions of interest went in, and the intent was to provide, as far as the grant is concerned, not as far as our application, but the grant conditions required that the program provide for adaptation of community spaces, in terms of assets such that the space could be used safely in accordance with, I guess, the pandemic, within the context of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. To build or improve community infrastructure, to encourage Canadians to re-engage in a more social circumstance and condition. Generally, staff seek to pursue, as we were discussing as part of the budget discussions earlier, Your Worship, staff tries to pursue funding, external funding opportunities, and try to see which ones align best with our municipal plans. And this was certainly no exception. And we do recognize that from time to time, the requirements of the grant application process mandate that we actually obtain a resolution of council, but more often that resolution of council comes if the application is actually able to proceed past the initial phase, and then get the council resolution prior to the actual commitment, prior to us being able to execute the agreement with the funding agency, which is often obtained either independently or as part of the budget process. In this particular case, it provided a bit more than what we are. Sorry, Your Worship, did you want me to pause?
No. Carry on. Thanks.
Often we hear about 2/3 or 1/3 funding, 2/3 funding by the higher other levels of government and 1/3 by the municipality, and this was, I guess, similar in that 75% of the costs were eligible for being externally funded. There were a couple of other unusual conditions that staff was made aware of by the approving officers, in that 50% of the funds, because of the fact that, as far as we were advised, no other jurisdiction had taken advantage of the funding opportunity in Western Canada. It was mostly in the East. So with that in mind, they gave us indication that if we were able to commit to the expenditure of 50% of the funds by March of this year, we would have, I guess, a better likelihood of success than not, with the remaining 50% being expended by March of next year. The other aspects of the conditions of the grant, or the details of the grant, and the Gateway project costing analysis. In order to meet the $500,000 expenditure requirements, Your Worship, staff were looking at undertaking the following works: demolition of the existing buildings that are vacant, and undertaking some site work and some servicing works, and engaging the public as part of the council direction, and determining what the interim and potential future uses might look like. Sorry, just making sure that my notes are consistent with the slides in front of council. So in terms of the other aspects of what the staff report included beyond the Gateway project itself, was the cost efficiencies that would be realized if the project, i.e. the Gateway project, was completed in conjunction with some highway works. In other words, the ultimate works along Fraser Highway. So this slide was intended is intended to demonstrate the consistency with the master transportation plan that we have, with the Alder Grove core plan, as well as the standards in the area and the previous works and ultimate road widening that have been completed as part of ACUCC. The frontage, as was shown earlier on that slide, fronting the commercial plaza, is about 70 meters in length, and the intent is to convert that from existing 3 lanes to the ultimate 4 lanes that's been called for in accordance with the long-term plans that we have, including a multi-use pathway, streetlights, signal modifications at Fraser Highway and 270th Street, as well as curb and gutter, obviously, all at the estimated cost of $600,000, subject to council approval, being funded from BCCs, with only 1% from general revenue as part of a assist factor. This conceptual drawing, Your Worship, shows or tries to show the scope of the works that I outlined earlier in the previous slide in terms of matching what has happened in front of ACUCC with respect to the essentially widening the highway to 4 lanes. It doesn't interfere with the median, obviously interferes with the sidewalk fronting the commercial plaza, in that the curb is not in its ultimate location, so that will have to be relocated to make room for the additional lane. And because of the fact that the signals or the signal poles, some of them were installed at the location that was available to the township at the time that the ACUCC project was completed, they need to be relocated. And I think there's also a median on the south, the delta median on the southwest corner of the intersection that requires to be relocated or removed to make sure that there is, a through east-west, lane without any interference of a physical barrier or a physical obstruction. So this outlines the anticipated roadworks. I'm just getting to the end, Your Worship. I recognize I've taken a bit more than maybe council had hoped, but I hope that this kind of paints a complete picture and tells the full story. This was never intended as being the ultimate use. So what I've tried to explain here is the transitional approach with respect to 3 phases, I guess, generally speaking, high level, 3 phases. The first one could be divided into 2 phases itself, and that being demolition of the 2 buildings that are vacant and grading of the site. And before we move on to 1B, obtaining additional public feedback as to some of the features, fine-tuning, if you will, the design, the concept, and I guess putting some more detail around it, putting some flesh around the bones. Then moving forward, by the time 2025 rolls around, and maybe beyond that, because it always takes time to make sure that there's sufficient funding set aside and there's council direction given. The 3rd building to the south would then be demolished, and a more ultimate plan then starts to kind of take shape in terms of what does the public wish to see, what does council wish to see in terms of the best use on the site, and how can that be accommodated at a subsequent phase that we're calling phase 3. And then putting all of that together in a bit of a schematic, Your Worship, this is what it might look like in terms of phase 1, comprising of demolition of existing buildings and completing some site grading based on council direction. Phase 2, demolishing the final building to the south, continuing with some fine-tuning of design, undertaking some options analyses, just like we have done for the Alder Insight, obviously based on council direction again. And finally, potentially, this is not obviously set in stone, but just the vision that as we can see it now, potentially expanding the Alder Grove Credit Union Community Center to the west, as well as to the east, but that is not the subject of discussion right now, but also to the west, as was shown earlier with the red line and the crosshatched. And that concludes my presentation, Your Worship. If there's any questions, or if council wishes to take a look at any of the slides, I'd be more than happy to share.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a quick question. I know this is separate from this, but you did mention it, the $600,000 potential for roadworks on Fraser Highway. And is any of that eligible for TransLink's major road network funding? And would that be pursued, or is it going to be, as you suggested, 99% DCCs?
Thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity. The challenge, I keep saying challenge, I know we have lots of challenges, mostly to do with finances and costs of things. The funding from TransLink, we try to accumulate them over a number of years and spend them in one chunk. So it is this section, if we wait long enough, will be eligible. But for now, the funding that we are entitled to from a couple of years ago, as well as the current year, is going towards what we are planning to do to the west,
Okay.
around 248th, I believe.
Yeah, no, that's fine, that's fair. So I know we used it in the past for, I think when the Alder Grove Credit Union Community Center was being built for some of the road improvements, we were able to utilize it. So I just wanted to kind of see where that fit in, but thanks for that. All right, I'll open it up to council for questions or comments. Councilor Whitmarsh.
Thank you, Mr. Seffi, for the outline and the historical overview. That was really helpful for me. I'm wondering if you could just go back to I think it was just maybe the slide just before this where it had the three phases that this slide. I guess my question is around, phase one, I understood was where we'd have some parking and some outdoor space. And then there was a phase two, which we can see what'll happen, particularly when the KFC in that area, their lease is done. In this phase three, if this was to occur, and I totally recognize this hasn't been decided by council, but if we were to have an indoor expansion at that space, that seems to go over top of the outdoor space that we would have established in this phase one. First of all, I guess the question is that true? And then the second part of the question is, if that is true, is that why earlier you showed some outdoor expansion space on the east side of ACUCC, along where those 4 properties are that we bought? And is that would be another outdoor space to replace what this could be potentially if there was an indoor facility there?
So, Your Worship, with thanks to Councillor Whitmarsh for the question, I can confirm that the concepts that were shown to council, the conceptual design that was shown to council, which is subject to change based on council direction and public feedback, did show some superficial, I guess I can call them, surface features, some grading and some outdoor street furniture, streetscape in the area that is now shown with the red line. Yes, certainly that was the case. So one comment I have is that would be, I guess, the same as the treatment that we have seen in the Alder Inn example, in that we have expended some funds to provide some kind of an interim condition with the ultimate intent of removing those and achieving some other objective. The other part of the question, I believe, related to, before I move on to the area to the east, I can also say that the design could be certainly fine-tuned to eliminate any unnecessary, I guess, costs that may be considered throwaway costs. In other words, limit the area of expenditure in the interim, in the red shaded area, the red crosshatched area, and provide only for some grading and some, I guess, minor landscaping and some street furniture that could be easily adapted or relocated to other areas. That could certainly be the case. But as far as the design was concerned, yes, it does occupy the area that was shown previously as being outdoor public gathering spaces. And as far as the area to the east is concerned, it was never intended as being anything other than related to the outdoor components of the existing ACUCC. So it would not be independent, whereas this is certainly being seen as being independent. But that blue crosshatched area was identified as being potentially related to expanding of the existing water components of the, I forget the name of the sponsor. Sorry, I apologize for that.
Alder Grove Credit Union.
No, not that one. The water feature,
Otter,
I think, has
Otter
the
Co-op.
water park, the Otter Water
Co-op,
Co-op. Yeah.
yeah.
So that would provide for integration, consolidation, and ensuring contiguity. I'm sorry, my tongue's getting twisted. Between the expansion and what currently exists.
Okay, that's helpful for me at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I did see Councilor Woodward's hand. Did you wish? Okay. All right. Any further questions, discussion? Councilor Davis?
Okay. I was waiting to listen to everybody else, but it didn't work out that way anyhow.
You're up.
Okay. I am concerned about trying to sell this project short just because of the timing of the grant money. I was concerned about that being an issue. I was also concerned about, is this the best for Aldergrove? Is this accommodate what we need? And one thing I heard today from Mr. Backham was the word maximum flexibility. Because I'm not, like I say, I'm not sure that we really know, well, we know what we're doing here, but I'm not so sure that this is what that Aldergrove needs. So maximum flexibility is one thing that I like. Direction and direction. If we actually, can you go back one more slide? This gives us phases. I like the idea of phases because we can demolition it, we can detail the design, but then phase 2, we can get a conceptual design work plan for when the Kentucky Fried Chicken gets tore down, and then we can go to the public, and we can get what they need so that we can put something there that Aldergrove can be proud of. I like it does, if we do this in a phasing, it does increase the potential for further expansion. It's not like, well, this is what you're going to get and that's it. This makes it so that we we still have some parking in the by the Kentucky Fried Chicken. That helps out. That's not the gateway project, but it helps out for 2 or 3 years. We do have time we do have time. Sorry, this is driving me crazy. Now the negatives in my mind are we chasing a grant for the cost of what we're going to put there? So maybe we're not. I thought I didn't want to vote for it because in the first go around, because I thought I heard comments from different councillors that, is this the best we can do? You know, do we add a little more? Is it best use? Can we put way better, more valuable things on there? Well, we still can if we pay attention and stick to this plan. I still haven't, I'd like to hear what other people have to say, but whatever we do, we want to showcase Aldergrove's gateway, and I feel that this is the place. The pool's there. You know, I mean, and things change, and we have 3 years for Kentucky Fried Chicken we still can do a lot. The piece of the property is valued twice as much as or even more than what we paid for it. We, as a council, bought it to expand. Anyhow, maybe there's just a few comments. I just wanted to get that off my chest for now. I want to hear what everyone else has to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Long.
Well, thanks, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. Safey, for expanding on this, because it is all about information, and I think that your presentation, if you go back to that map that shows it, provides an opportunity for the community to see that it's not either or. I mean, there's a lot of either or emails coming around and people saying, well, this is what we should do there, or this is what we should do there. And I see this as doing it all. It's quite a large piece of property. So this I think helps demonstrate how the future expansion of the ACUCC is not necessarily hampered by this, but in many ways can be complemented by what's being proposed. But everybody knows how much I like outdoor plazas and how I have a passion for this project, and I wanted to just focus a little bit about why I like public plazas so much and how I think this project can be such a benefit to Aldergrove. And so I did a bunch of research to try and find out why I was so passionate about it, and I ran across some information, and it was a rebroadcast of a keynote speaker from a recent Metro Vancouver housing conference. And it was by Professor Eric Kleinenberg, and I gave council a photocopy of the front of his book, where he says, social infrastructure can help fight inequality, polarization, and the decline of civic life. Wow, that's a pretty strong statement, but that's what his belief is. And his belief is that building public spaces is a way to bring the community together, and I guess that's exactly what the plazas have a potential to do. He's a professor of sociology, public policy, media, culture, and communications at New York University. So he believes that the future of democratic societies rests not just on shared values, but in shared spaces, and public spaces, like we're talking about here, is one of them. And it's because it's where critical human connections are formed. I just want to play a 20-second or so thing. I think I'm allowed to, Your Worship. It's very, very brief here. Of what he has to say about that.
I think Councillor Long.
Well, I have 10 minutes, don't I?
No, just do you want to turn it off, please, just for a sec? I think you summarized it, and I think that's
okay.
adequate. So.
All right. I don't know why you don't want to hear him, but he's a professor. But
okay.
that's okay.
I've got the
That's
floor,
fine. I
thanks.
can email it to. Well,
Yeah.
I'll just tell you what he's saying. In the clip, he's saying that without these kind of connections, like who's going to build these connections? It is. He calls social infrastructure. Let's be clear. He doesn't talk about it as being, and I don't think we need to be looking at it either as being a concept or a service or a structure. It is physical, actual places where people meet. And who's going to build these things? Well, it's part of civic duty. It's just like roads, bridges, sewer, water. These are physical things that local government have to build in order for society to have a place to gather. And in the clip, he talks about how important gathering places are, especially in COVID, because you know what the message is to us now? To be safe in this world, you're supposed to social distance from people. And that just goes against how we're built as human beings. So having gathering places that are safe to gather in at this junction of our lives and of the development of our communities is so important. And that's why this grant is being offered. It's a COVID recovery grant that is specifically for outdoor spaces. So that's one of the reasons I think this is such an important project for the future of Aldergrove. It's a great gathering spot. It's something we can be very proud of. It's very relevant, and it's being financed by the feds. And I think also you can see by this map, it's not going to interfere with other development on the property. I don't think this should be about money. It's not all about profit, but it's really about community benefits. And if we build a facility that's being proposed here, I think it's something that's excellent, and it's a total example of real physical social infrastructure where people can gather, and it's accessible to everybody in the community. Old and young, all times of the day. You don't have to register to go there. You can just gather in your own community, and you can feel much more part of your community. You can meet neighbors. And I think this will lead to a better community life for everybody. So I'm really in favor of it, and I hope that the council can share that vision and move forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have not a lot of questions today, but just some comments, I guess, about the process and other things. So you'll have to bear with me. I don't think I'll take minutes, or 10 minutes, I should say, my allotted time. But anyway, I feel a sense of appreciation that we've had this discussion and further details today. And as we all know, unfortunately, there is a time constraint that's been placed on this because of the granting process. So I can understand that, but I feel that it's very unfortunate that there is this sense of, for some of us anyways, I'll include myself, sense of duress that we're under now to try and make a decision about something that really is a critical public policy decision. This is not, to me, something that we should look upon as, well, you know, we decided one thing and then we're sort of cavalierly looking at it and might decide something else. I don't appreciate the sense that this could be some semblance in some people's minds of a swing vote about people who would be looking at the situation and deciding for one reason or another that they choose to change their position or not. So I came here today, frankly, with an open mind to find out what I could find out more from council. So I do appreciate that there's been more information that's been put on the table. And just to refresh individuals who may or may not have listened in to the last conversation, my comments were liberally salted with highest and best use, opportunity cost, et cetera, although I can completely understand, as Mr. Safey said, this project was not predicated on that premise. This project was predicated on the premise that we had an underlying plan, that we had an opportunity because of grant money to undertake a number of things that frankly would have to come from another budget resource. So taking all of those things into account, I was actually hoping today that I could have some clarity about whether or not I was going to be in favor of this proposition. And I took some comfort in the fact that according to the amended motion, that this is an opportunity to consider amendments. I guess my problem is looking, and we have the right screen up here, at the Alder Grove Gateway Plaza proposed transition. That was not something that I anticipated would be put in the mix as where we could continue to build out, because my understanding is, and I can stand to be corrected, that part of the whole rationale of having this area right next to the ACUCC was for purposes such as having a green wall and to have shading and queuing and all those things. And I don't understand at this point how that has been added to the mix. This is not a disrespectful comment. I'm not a planner, but I was buying into this idea. If there was any potential to have both of these needs met, I would prefer that we had an opportunity to go forward with phase one, which would be a very nice plaza, basically on half an acre. And then the other part would go to council for consideration about mixed use building. Do we want to add other services? What is it that we would like to do with the remainder of the lot? Because actually we have quite a long time to consider that aspect of it. But unfortunately, this doesn't help me because I don't really foresee that I'm going to throw my support for this that indicates to me an undermining of what I thought was really valuable about the project in the first place, which was the interface between the ACUCC, have some parking. I've got a laundry list of recommendations for things to add that would lend support, I think, and even more credence to having it based on what the government criteria is for the funding. But I do not see that here. So I'm going to listen to the rest of the conversation of my council mates. But I don't know, maybe staff could give me some sense of what opportunities there could be to do something other than phase 3 on this site. Because frankly, I would prefer that. But if it's not possible for planning reasons or other considerations that I don't know anything about, then, you know, I guess it's just dead in the water for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Could staff comment on this concept that's in front of us and the phasing and what's involved over the next several years? Maybe Mr. Backen could take a stab at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start. The request, or the reason the red shaded area is there is simply because at the last meeting there was some discussion as to what the potential would be for the expansion of the facility itself. I think the red says it well, though, it's potential. So what we have to do is, now that we know what the site constraints are, determine what it should look like, whether it should be entirely plaza, whether it should be entirely covered, whether it should be a combination with a mixed-use building and other pieces there. What it allows us to advance is just that we effectively are getting closer towards a development site that we recognize likely could not really start in earnest till after the existing tenancy is actually ended. it would really be for council to determine at a later date what those elements would be, such as a green wall, green roof, plaza, gathering space, none of that, something else, something that could involve parking, something that could involve residential uses potentially. It really then was left to the will of council, but we have a site that is therefore advanced to allow other opportunities that we're simply suggesting that council can further at a later date if they so choose to take advantage of what we think is a modest opportunity for federal funding under the programs that exist. Mr. Sefi?
Your Worship, I guess the only thing I would add is there's, I guess, a question about this area here, which I'm highlighting with the cursor on the screen. A portion of the cross hatched with red line, that is a question of ultimate use there. Now, this could either be treated at some expense with some interim measures, or it could be left alone with no interim measures. In other words, focus any of the plaza idea that we might have in this area outside of the red shaded area. That is certainly a possibility that is not being precluded with this concept. So it's either do some temporary interim measures that shows a plaza that would be at least 3 years in the presence, or maybe longer. But we all know that there's nothing that can be done here until 2025. So with that in mind, the question is, do we proceed with something in this area, say the 1/3 of the 0.75 acre property, which, as Councillor Arneson just referenced, could be leaving the other half acre to do some plaza, gateway, public type of a feature and design on? Or do we want to expand that and include this area as well, or not? If we do, then that simply means that there is some throwaway costs in whatever we decide to do in the future with this area, if in fact it includes expanding the AC-UCC. If it doesn't, then that's fine too. This could be either kept, preserved, or expanded upon. It doesn't preclude the possibility of a green wall or a green roof. I think all of it could be accommodated.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. I gotta wonder where do I even start? So looking at this slide, let's just start with the proposed transition slide. Phase 3 should have been phase 0.5. That should have been done before a grant application was made. Some engagement with somebody should have occurred somewhere. Potential AC-UCC indoor expansion based on council direction, ultimate site development. That conversation should have occurred long before we got to the point where we're debating a plaza or not a plaza. I don't accept the premise that the debate is about a plaza or not a plaza. I don't even accept that it's a plaza. We keep using the word plaza. So I actually went and looked up the definition of plaza. Public square. This is not a public square. Everybody keeps calling it a plaza. It's not a plaza. It's parking with some trees around it. So if we want to create an $8 million parking lot and forego all of the opportunity on the remainder of the site, that's what's occurring here, with no conversation with the public whatsoever. So I went back and I actually reread when I got notice that this special meeting was being called. Again, well, I guess we'll just call those until we get the result the mayor wants. I went back and read the public engagement charter, and I found that this process has violated, in my opinion, at least 3 to 4 of those provisions. Strive for inclusivity and diversity and participation. Provide early, ongoing, meaningful opportunities for participation. Ensure accountability, transparency. Well, that certainly doesn't qualify here. Provide clear, simple, and timely communication. Identify and eliminate barriers to participation. And now we're drawing red squares on diagrams based upon a KFC tenancy, which is going to be gone in a few years. This whole process has gone off the rails. Special meetings, third time now we've discussed this. Again, I'm not sure what the objective here is anymore, other than to just keep calling the meeting until, again, the vote result is what's desired. I'm pretty clear that the process led to this outcome, where maybe a plaza is the right proposal, but then let's actually build a plaza, not a parking lot. Stop calling it a plaza, please, because it's not a plaza. The process and the consultation just didn't occur, not with council and not with the public. And I think that that's led to the core problem that I have, that we have a $7-8 million piece of real estate that we haven't gone through the right process with Aldergrove and with other members of the taxpaying public to create this concept, even propose this concept, which foregoes a lot more than what this red square potentially represents. I don't know what that red square is. I don't know what's inside of there. I don't know how big it is. I don't know what the yellow drive aisle means in terms of how that compromises the next 5-6 years potentially of what could occur there. So revisions about what? I mean, we can get input on what exactly. Well, the input should have occurred in what phase 3 is. That should have been, again, at the beginning. That's where the input should have occurred. Not just with council, but also with members of the public. What is the plan for this site? And I've been asking about that since early 2019. And so for me, I think we just come back to, again, what is it that we're trying to achieve for downtown Aldergrove? And if we want outdoor spaces, then let's create outdoor spaces, but find and think of the idea of where those might be the best place to go within the context of the core plan and the amenity fund that's available. Not just say, well, we happen to own this, so let's put it there. Well, maybe we should be considering what else could go here. And the opportunity for that has never occurred, hasn't occurred outside the context of trying to get to 5 votes to approve what I think is a pretty significantly lost opportunity for what the future of this site could be, what the Township of Langley could be doing for downtown Aldergrove. And I don't support this. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Places for the people, I think if you were to score the Township of Langley for the number of regional parks and park space we have, I think we would be second to none in the region. You look at Campbell Valley, you look at Aldergrove, you go to Fort Langley. A number of years ago, through a genius, I thought whoever's in staff was able to convince Bray Island to go regional district, and the likes of many others. We have an awful lot of open space. We have a lot of park space. We as a community, not different than all other, well, not all, but some other within the country, we have, in our wisdom, decided when we build a school to put a park beside it. That's something we decided, the Township of Langley. Thinking forward for those reasons. Now we're before us, and I wanted to also, I always like to use example. I hate to spoil a good story with the truth. I mean, so I'll show that I actually have a facility pass in which I have. It's an inside joke. The picture on it is not long hair. But I've had it for a number of years. I am a user of these facilities. I believe in our facilities, and even though we're under COVID, I still register and go down whenever I can. I prefer to walk in, but the registration system's in place. So we have a number of things in the Township of Langley. Now, today, let's come back. Last time I talked about the event center, a few other. I'm not going to do that today. But we have a parcel of land. What is the best use? How can we get the maximum use out of this thing for the benefit of Aldergrove? With consultation, with public input, with design, and get something that we can really be proud of. And I look at this sketch and diagram, I don't know if this is something the people in Aldergrove or all of Langley, if you want to poll them, would be, this is something to be proud of. The Aldergrove Credit Union Community Center is something they should be proud of because it's a great facility. And again, as a facility user, I've been there many times, including my wife and I were unfortunate. We weren't able to go for the January the 1st swim because it was closed this year. But we went down there anyway. We went down there on January the 1st because we wanted to see, obviously it wasn't open. We wanted to see if anybody came down. But okay, so here we are today. Mr. Safety, my question to the chair, you said it in your presentation, the red form, Phase 3 is something that you've just placed there, is not something that's part of the motion. Is that not correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so we're talking about something that's, it's really not on the motion. And my concern, and I've said it to staff as well, because I've done my research, is that this is a permanent submission to the feds for the grant. This is not a temporary. I mean, if it was temporary, perhaps council might be looking at different, at least maybe I would be looking at the concept of something temporary where it would be there, placed there, used for a number of years, and then something else will be put in the future, perhaps in 2025 when the lease runs out, whatever. I know we're not going to be building something right away, but I'm thinking about something for the future. I appreciate staff and their time and energy to put in, but I haven't been convinced that this is the right and the best use for this site. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kunst.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Safey, for that presentation. It actually really helped me. I didn't actually know some of the details about that or what the possibilities of this were. So, and as I thought about this Gateway Plaza and this Gateway project, it was more about, you know, what am I thinking about Aldergrove and you know, as Aldergrove builds out, you're going to be seeing possibly a parkade, a tower, maybe, you know, more retail and opportunities for people to buy things. So I thought this would be a really great place for a public square, a plaza, and maybe right now, you know, it doesn't look all that great, but anytime I've been anywhere in the Township of Langley and people that I know who come to the Township of Langley and they visit our parks, like the Derrick Doubleday Park, everybody raves about that place. Look at the LEC. We've got a museum that's, you know, going to be opening in another year or so. The ACUCC. What have we built that has been crap? I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't see this as something that, you know, we're going to make and that people are going to go, oh, you know, I mean, there's always lots of thought and you know, and there's potential here, Phase 3 to, you know, where if it really is just, you know, something that nobody wants, I can see that then, you know, we change it up. But for the interim, why not, you know, have a public square, a place where people can gather? We know that people, you know, are really needing that right now. So it's, you know, they want to plant some trees. And I don't know, I see these squares as places for, it supports, you know, connectivity in our communities. So this was something that I just thought, I didn't see that it was going to be so difficult to sort of, you know, comprehend what it could possibly look like. Obviously, it's maybe political now, but I see this as somewhere that, you know, people in Aldergrove may just really enjoy a place where they can come, you know, visit with their families or with their friends, have a cup of coffee and walk down and, you know, go to the ACUCC. So I'm absolutely in support of this. And yeah, those are my 2 bits.
Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm having real trouble with this one, and I like the phrase that Councillor Arneson used, the duress phrase, because I'm feeling the same way. It's, are we chasing this for grant money? Or do we really have a plan for this area? And I don't think we have a plan for this area, and I don't think we can chase the money and come up with a plan after the fact. For example, the green wall that was in the first iteration, I'm sure that we would have to keep that green wall. So how could we cover the green wall up with the building extension? Mixing cars and pedestrians is just not safe. And that's all this thing is doing, is mixing cars and pedestrians. I think it's a real short change to Aldergrove to give them a phased plaza. Like we were gonna give them half a plaza at the last council meeting. Now we're talking about maybe we'll have 3 different phases spread out over a number of years. Well, I don't think it's fair that they should have to wait for a finished product for a lengthy period of time. We spent $3.7 million to acquire this property. We acquired it as a strategic investment, which is what Mr. Backen said. I don't see anything strategic about what's being proposed here. I really don't. And if you've got a piece of land that's doubled in value, is this the best that we can come up with? Some sort of a half-baked plan to look into 3 phases over a number of years? I mean, essentially, the bottom line, and someone mentioned this, is this a project we want to cut a ribbon on? And honestly, for me, it's not a project I want to cut a ribbon on. The parking is there. Tear the buildings down, put more parking in. You can still have farmers markets on the blank parking spaces going forward until we actually come up with a game plan for this strategic corner lot that makes sense for the community and is wanted by the community and doesn't mix cars and pedestrians. So I have one question. What would it cost us just to demo the buildings? Just to get rid of them? And I have 2 set questions. So the first one is, if it doesn't cost a whole lot to demo the buildings, then let's just demo them and put in additional parking that can be used as a plaza going forward until we decide to do what it is that we want to do there. The second thing is, we've got some strategic applications for federal grants. And I'm thinking of the announcement that was made in September by the Liberal Deputy Minister, Finance Minister, with regards to LEC. If we go after this grant money, is it going to take away our opportunity to get other more important grant money? Because I certainly don't think that this is a project that we should be going after if it's going to knock us out of the running in any way, shape, or form for other more important and larger federal grant programs. So I'm not changing my vote on this. I didn't like it 2 weeks ago. I still don't like it. It's not a well thought out, reasoned, or strategic plan. It's just and I believe Councillor Woodward said this, or somebody said it, we're just chasing after grant money here. And that's not a good reason to do anything if we don't have a well-developed plan. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Sefi, you can go back to that slide on the financing. I believe there's one that explained the costs. I think this is the one Councillor Richter was asking for. So demolition, hazardous material abatement, site preparation, grading, service decommissioning is about $500,000, from what I understand.
Yes, Your Worship. It is difficult to estimate with any degree of certainty the costs of demolition, because it really depends how much hazardous material there is to be, I guess, managed, if you will, and disposed of according to the regulations. But overall, we think it would be in the hundreds of thousands of dollar range, approximately. I would suggest between $200,000 to $300,000 would be the cost for the demolition of the 2 buildings.
Okay, and is it 50% of the money has to be spent? So 50% of the grant or 50% of the total budget?
50% of the total budget. So the budget is $1 million. We are required to spend $500,000 by the March of this year. That's why we've shown there the $500,000 prior to March of 2022, which includes the demolition, which is expected to be about half of that, say $250,000 for that, and the remaining costs for site preparation, grading, and servicing decommissioning.
Thank you. And on the other question Councillor Richter had, maybe, I don't know, Mr. Backen or Mr. Sefi can answer this, is when we apply for one particular grant with the federal government and there's other grants out there, does one grant preclude us from applying or receiving additional grants? I don't know if anybody can answer that. I know there's a variety of different grants, but perhaps.
Ordinarily not, Your Worship. They come in different categories, and we've been successful simultaneously in some categories and been unsuccessful simultaneously in categories. We understand they're viewed independently.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll move on to Councillor Whitmarsh.
Thank you, Your Worship. So for me, the presentation today was helpful and cleared up a lot of things. For me, I think outdoor space is critical. I think it's really important that we look to develop outdoor spaces. And particularly when we think of the 272nd piece of property that we know is going to be used for other purposes. It's not going to remain an outdoor area, at least from what we gather. It's probably going to be commercial with some residential or something like that, multi-use facility. We know that the Aldergrove Mall is being redeveloped. It's largely going to be residential and commercial. And so in that area, there's a lot of extra commercial being added to Aldergrove, a lot of additional housing being added to Aldergrove. And we need outdoor spaces. And to me, an outdoor space that's right close to the ACUCC makes a lot of sense. This is where people come and families come to enjoy the day and to relax and to spend time together. We use that in the winter as well with the arena and the heated swimming pool that people use in the winter, and it's a place for people to come and gather. And the drawings that we had in terms of the original proposal did have some parking, which we know we need parking, but also included green walls. It included an amphitheater, included some water features and those sorts of things as part of it. And I think what I like about what's here is that this is a very flexible plan. I think Councillor Davis commented on the flexibility of this plan. And so we look at what's being proposed. So the proposal that goes to the grant is really phase one, and it has two parts to it, and that's $1 million, and includes the decommissioning of the buildings we have. It includes detailed planning and design for the landscaping and outdoor space and street furniture and all those things that we need for the outdoor space. And then the rest of it is phases 2, and if there is a phase 3, are for the future. It's up for council to decide at the time. It's to get public input and lots of opportunities to re-engage and consider and keep developing as we move forward. That seems to be a great flexibility to the plan. It doesn't bind us to anything. It allows us to think through. It allows us to engage the public. All the things that I'm hearing council say we need to do, that's exactly what's being proposed here. And then it suggests that for phase 3, they did have a drawing of an indoor space. I don't think the staff is recommending that. That is simply put there because some members of council expressed the desire for indoor expansion space. And so the point is, if that is a decision of council, and it's not saying it is, but if it was, there is room to do that in that location. But that doesn't mean it's the best location for it. It doesn't even mean that we're going to have indoor expanded space. We know we have plenty of high school and elementary school gyms that are free most of the weekends and most of the week. I've checked into that. There's a lot of free space. So maybe down the road, we will need expanded indoor gym space, but currently we have lots in Aldergrove right now. And so to me, this is a great step forward. It really creates a great gateway project. I don't think this is a great place for maybe a big housing complex or something like that. It's right by the ACUCC. What a great place to put an outdoor area. And it begins the process. So for me, the flexibility in this, the staff has gone back and made it much more flexible so that just about everybody on council can have can express and have interest and input into the things that are important to them in this plan. And so, this plan didn't start with council. Is here today, and we have an opportunity to do something really great. And it's not about chasing money, but if we can get $750,000 to do something great that we already want to do, then that's a bonus. But it's not about chasing money. It's about doing something great for the community. So I'm going to support this project. I think it allows us to do all the things that I've heard at the council table. I haven't heard one thing that we can't do if we go forward with this plan. So I'm going to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward?
Maybe I'll supply some. So I just wanted to reiterate again, I actually kind of like those comments regarding duress. Duress sounds a bit strong, but I think what it does do is it illustrates very well for me an agreement that this isn't the process to get there. I mean, what we want to do and achieve for downtown Aldergrove. Again, if there's a need or desire to build some outdoor spaces, I mean, I recall quite a bit around the new Aldergrove Mall in terms of the Creek upgrades and so on. If there's a desire to build more, then you start with that desire and find out where that should go. That's outlined somewhat in the core plan in terms of pocket parks and some urban park locations. Some connectivity to the Alder Grove Town Center to Fraser Highway, which is also not, I think, on the radar for the moment, but it's in the core plan. There's a number of places where some outdoor spaces can be created if that's the desire. To me, you don't say, oh, we've got an $8 million piece of property or a $7 million piece of property, let's put it there. That's not the right process, in my opinion. You take a property of that strategic location and the value that it has and the potential that it has, and as Councillor Ferguson said at the last meeting, which resonated with me, you plan for the future. You don't plan for the interim. I've never understand why we're always planning for the interim for downtown Alder Grove, but we're planning for the future everywhere else. We're not planning for the interim at the LEC. We're not planning for the interim in all kinds of other areas. We're not planning for the interim at McLeod when we spend $5 million on it, but we're always planning for the interim for downtown Alder Grove for some reason, and I don't like that. I would have preferred the right process to engage the community and find out what makes sense there, along with some core objectives and determine what those objectives are, and then determine what the proposal looks like. Not take an $8 million property and chase $500,000 or $700,000 in grant funding for a property that could be worth a lot more than that in 3 to 5 years. The phasing that I see here is 2023, looking for the KFC to end. So I'll get input around 2025 to 2027. And that's when the community sounds like is going to get some input as well. So I think that this has been a good illustration of how we can do things better and do things differently and plan for the future and really plan for what we want to try to achieve in places like downtown Alder Grove and put the same effort into that we put into other areas like the Langley Event Center. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, I just want to kind of expand on, what is being said today. And I'm sure sometimes people say things they really hadn't even thought about, they really maybe don't mean. I mean, to say, I have a hard time believing it. This compares with the job we did at the LEC. It's just, both, because I was on council when we built the LEC. And what we did was we put together a process that would include working with the school district, working with Trinity, working with a number of organizations, and putting in parks as well, spray parks, and it took about a whole year to get that thing in place. And I can't believe that comparison would be made. But people, are passionate about an issue, and they're passionate about this issue. The thing that gets in the way is it's not a short term, it's a futuristic, and also it's probably not the best use, and it hasn't had that much public consultation. And what is the best use? And I actually have a question. The old, to Mr. Backen or Mr. Safey, the land at 222nd at Fraser Highway and the old municipal hall, if you're familiar with the site, we sold that. We owned it and sold that to a applicant that would do some, improvement to the area, including open space and including some kind of an addition or some kind of money towards a W.C. Blair pool. Is that not correct? I mean, I know I'm asking you to go back in time a bit, but there is housing around a pool. There's such a thing as housing around pools.
So that's correct. There is a condominium complex, townhouse complex on what was the former works yard site, with preservation of the previous municipal hall site and the landscaped area out front.
No, but my second part, did they contribute to the Blair pool or to any of the park space subsequent in the area?
There was some funding that came forward for some playground apparatus, that sort of thing.
Okay, anyway, so I'm just saying we can use municipal land to work with applicants to better a community. And I'm just saying that perhaps we haven't talked about that, but that's another for the future. Anyway, thank you.
All right, well, we've had a good discussion. I want to thank staff for putting together this presentation. It provided, okay, Council Davis, I didn't. Sorry. Okay.
Okay.
If you,
I pressed the wrong button and thought I was pressing the thing.
No problem.
Okay, this is where the rubber meets the road for me. Thank you very much, Mayor Frost, for bringing this back and giving me a heart attack or being such a pain for me. I'm not taking this lightly. We've spent a lot of time. I've heard really good words, which normally I would accept: flexibility, phasing. I had it written down here, I feel that there's no right or wrong answer, but I don't want to say that because I'm going to give an answer right now, which way I'd like to vote for this. We have unpacked this and we've tore it all apart. Is this the best use? I'm not suggesting that we put underground parking or houses on top. Is this the best use for that little jewel of a swimming pool? In 3 years from now, we could do this project without grant money, and it gives us all the options at that point in time, and we are not fighting anything. We're not fighting trying to get grant money, and I'd just like to thank everybody for putting the extra bit in here, and I think I'm going to leave my vote. Eric's looking at me. Okay. I think I'm going to leave my vote the way it was, because this is Alder Grove. I don't think by doing it with a certain amount of grant money, it's going to tie us in a little bit, but there is lots of flexibility. But for now, I'm decided that I think I'm going to vote against it because of my instincts, and I just wanted you to know that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Well, it's like a poker game where I've accidentally seen your card, and it's not a very comfortable position to be in. So I guess I just wanted to end my comments with this is such a shame. And what's going to happen to the property if we don't do something? I mean, I think the grant was just a bonus that it happened to come along. You can see by the timeline, there was only a month that the staff had to apply for it. I would imagine that staff went, wow, here's something that's going to help pay. It's going to relieve some of the burden on taxpayers to do something that we have to do anyway. The buildings are empty. So are they going to get boarded up now? Are we going to have to find $500,000 somewhere in our budget to demolish them and to do something with it? Is it going to languish as an empty lot like the Alder Inn does? Councilor Davis, you've already played your card, but you could still trade one in and take another one. Really, I think this is a huge short-sighted decision by council if we don't continue with this. The flexibility is totally built in. There is community planning being presented in the presentation by Mr. Safey. We had 100 and some odd comments from the public on the Alder Inn property, and this thing mirrors a lot of those desires. It is an awesome opportunity, and it is something that we can take advantage of, the grant. We're not chasing it. It has come and fallen on our laps. If there's any way you can change your vote, you will not regret it. Alder Grove will use it, it will enjoy it, and it has been shown to us today that it's a win-win for those that want to build indoor facilities and outdoor facilities. It's not always about money. You can't put a value on public space, but it'll be what it'll be. Call the vote, Your Worship. And
We've got Councillor Richter wishes to speak a second time.
it's like shooting a horse.
Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say that public space, I said it before, I'll say it again, is not parking space. It's public space.
Am I still on?
And you can't be mixing people and cars. And I want to do the right thing for Alder Grove. I think Alder Grove does need a plaza, but it doesn't need a plaza that's got parking in it. That just doesn't make sense. So, I mean, I don't know why this is all about getting this money now to do something that is not going to be in the long-term best interests of Alder Grove, or alternatively, why we would put money into this only to rip it down in a few years' time and replace it with something else. That's not money well spent. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there any further comments? I know it was, no, not everyone, but I just want to wrap it up and say thanks to staff for Mr. Seffi for providing us with that further information. And I think I'll stand by my decision to bring this back. This is important, and I believed it was important enough that we should have another look at it. is $750,000. And staff have provided us with some options, but it's up to council. So with that, thank you, staff, and I'm going to call the question. All those in favor and those opposed? Councillor Woodward, Councillor Davis, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Arneson, Councillor Richter opposed. The motion fails. Can I have a motion to terminate? Councillor Davis, second by Councillor Woodward. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Thank you.